What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live here on a Monday, 1 week before Media Day, and Damian Lillard is still a Portland Trailblazer. This is yet another Dame Saga stream, Eric, because we had a feeling like it might be coming to a close on Friday. It's still not come to a close yet, but we have more rumors than ever. Apparently, we have more teams than ever, and nothing seems to make sense in this entire thing. So, we're going to discuss the Toronto Raptors, who are now, by some reports, the favorite, but by other reports, maybe aren't too serious about getting Damian Lillard. We'll discuss all the intricacies of that. We'll discuss what potential trade packages would look like from the Toronto Raptors. OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, neither? Both? We'll discuss every little piece that the Blazers could get back from the Raptors. We'll compare it to Miami Heat's best offer, and that's what this stream is going to be. We'll, of course, answer questions from you guys and maybe discuss a couple other teams that have been whispered about, and that's going to be today's stream. Looking forward to it. Eric, how's it going, man?
Not too bad. How was your day?
It was good. Just worked on a bunch of stuff today, still trying to get ready for the season. I'm trying not to procrastinate because I always feel like I procrastinate something. So, looking forward to actually being able to talk about basketball once we've moved on from the situation. Like, I thought I was done last week. I am more done this week, but this is what we have to talk about. The Blazers are the talk of the league right now. They are the center of the NBA universe. And, it's what we got. So, we'll take questions from chat later. If you guys want us to dive into a couple other talking points regarding this team, whether it's Scoot, whether it's Simons, whether it's Sharp, whether it's, philosophies for next year, that sort of thing, we can discuss it. You just got to ask the question when we're taking questions. But first, we got to just start off with the elephant in the room, which is that Toronto seems to have serious interest in Damian Lillard. There's been reports that they are the leader in the clubhouse, so to say, regarding pursuing Dame. There's talk about maybe they would include Scotty Barnes. There's talk about OG Anunoby. There's been a lot of debates amongst Blazer fans regarding if the Blazers should take a Heat package or an OG Anunoby-centered package. Eric, I don't know what else you want to add to this, but go ahead.
Oh, and then magically some, offer from the beginning from the Miami Heat leaks today, that's their final offer or something as well, just to throw more crap into it.
Yeah. Basically, their package included, quote-unquote, 2 firsts and Tyler Hero. I saw a lot of Blazer fans acting like that's all it was, which it said included, so who knows what the entire package is, because I've seen numerous trade packages in the past reported by media people that omits very valuable assets before. So, maybe it includes Caleb Martin. Maybe it's Caleb Martin to a third team. Maybe Phoenix with Nurkic for Ayton. At this point, to sum up the situation, it seems like there's smoke in every which direction. It seems like nobody truly knows what's going on. What's your read into the situation? Has anything changed since Friday? What are your thoughts on all this, Eric?
Well, I thought the Blazers hadn't talked to Miami, so how do they know what the offer is? Anyways, I still believe it's going to be the Heat in the end, but there is that X factor that we've alluded to in the past, and that is, are they going to be that petty and that spiteful to where they just say no to whatever offer Miami comes up with, no matter how good the offer is? Will they just simply not want to trade Dame there and not want to give him what he wants and pull the trigger, whether that's Joe or Burt Cold or Jody or whoever? Is that still a possibility? So that's the one wild card in all of this that you just can't fathom, because we've heard all along, Tori, especially directed at both of us. You can't take the Heat offer because you have to do what's best for the franchise, right? And that's not what's best for the franchise. That's what's best for Dame. But now we're hearing that the Blazers might be willing to take a lesser offer just so they don't have to trade him to Miami. So couldn't you apply that same logic to that? Like all those people who are saying that and would be happy that we traded him to Toronto? Couldn't you then say, well, if they specifically just refused to trade with Miami and could have possibly gotten more, is that a case where the Blazers simply did the opposite of what they were claiming they were going to do, just like everything else? But yeah, these it just doesn't, like, nothing seems to make sense right now, and that's why I don't necessarily believe it, because why would, if Toronto and Portland were close on a trade, first of all, if Scotty Barnes was included or there was any possibility of Scotty Barnes to be included, this deal would be either done or basically done, and that would be, we'd be trading Dame to Toronto, and Toronto would be hoping that Dame reports. So I've said this since before we even talked Dame trades, that Toronto's not going to trade Scotty Barnes in any circumstance, whether it was for the third pick or for Dame or whatever. So I think that's pretty well known right now. But like, most of Masai's moves are not this public. And yeah, the Miami thing has been public, but that's because Dame and his agent came out and said only Miami and stuff. So that's why Miami's been so prevalent in all these discussions. But most of the time with teams like Toronto, you're not hearing about a trade this much. And that's why, in my mind, I feel like it's like over the top. Oh, Toronto's so awesome. They have all these great pieces. Everything is falling into place. They're now the front runners and all this stuff. Like, I don't really see that being the case if it was the case, if that makes sense. If it was all those things that are being reported, I feel like it would have been a lot more quieter, and Portland would just secretly get a deal done with them and then say, screw Miami. And the fact that it's so public and all these like pieces that we apparently want now are coming to light, but like we haven't heard for months like what they want from Miami or if they want anything from Miami. So I feel like it's just a little too over the top to be real or to be 100% real.
Yeah, this situation is just kind of unfortunate because, like, I'm not the guy who has much intel, right? But right now I'm hearing more stuff than I've ever heard about anything, but it's also contradictory that, like, if I take one little shred and share it with you guys, there's a very good chance that it ends up being wrong, right? Like, it's impossible. Even hearing stuff, like, I don't normally hear stuff, and I'll admit that, you know, I don't pretend to hear stuff. I'm hearing more stuff regarding this situation than any situation ever covering the Blazers with this channel, and it's just all contradictory, and none of it adds up together, and it's basically leaves me guessing like I haven't heard anything, right? Like, it leaves me guessing just like you guys are in chat. I have no idea, man. Regarding Toronto's interest, you know, one thing is it's legitimate, another thing is, oh, it's overstated, another theory out there is Portland's using it for leverage against Miami, which wouldn't be a bad play if that was the case and Miami wasn't offering their best package. Like, that's what Portland should do in that case. So, you know, it's just, I have no read on this situation. And it's just kind of frustrating to sit here and actually be able to hear things, but I don't even want to share it because it could easily end up being wrong or easily end up being something that's clipped. And then after the fact, it's like, oh, wow, you were way off. So at this point, like, I'm just ready for it to hopefully play out in a way that starts making sense, because that's, you know, just sitting here trying to think it through logically, it gives me a headache because I sit here all day and just kind of rehash like all these reports, and then a new one comes out and I try and make sense of it. logically. With reports regarding any NBA situation, a lot of times I just try and think about it logically. I put myself in the shoes of like one team versus the other team. There's of course going to be some games, leverage plays, stuff leaked to the press. And I try to just think it all through. Trying to think through this situation, especially the last 4 days of it, just gives me a headache. So at this point, like, I'm done trying to make sense of things. I'm just going to sit on the freaking sidelines and wait and see what happens, because I still do think that he gets traded before media day, because as I've said all along, I don't think Portland wants to go into media day with Damian Lillard and have that whole circus. And I think all this reporting, everything that's happened lately, is basically Portland ramping up their aggression in terms of trying to find a good enough Damian Lillard trade in order to make it happen for them. But other than that, man, I'm kind of at a loss for words as to how this thing is played out.
And Hyken reported today that Joe Cronin, Dwayne Hankins, and Chauncey Billups, of course Billups would, but all three of them will speak at media day, and players as well, like always. So Cronin's going to be there on the stand next Monday. So yeah, I don't see how he wants to sit there and answer questions about why is Dame, or what are you going to do with Dame, or is Dame going to play, or what. Like, I don't think they want that kind of day. I think they want to focus on Scoot and Sharp and Anthony and some of that kind of stuff. So I know I said last week that it could bleed into this week, but I would be shocked if it bled past next Monday now. Like, it's got to be over by then, right?
I mean, see, you're asking me a question that I'm thinking about logically. Mm-hmm. But that hasn't helped in terms of trying to analyze this situation lately. So what is the illogical answer? The illogical answer is that he ends up in training camp, right?
Right.
Maybe it's about time where I start guessing as to what is the more illogical and seemingly out there answer. Because I did not think we were going to be sitting here dealing with this on September 25th, right? Like, I didn't expect anything to happen in August, but that was mostly because GMs take that time off. It's kind of like the best month to take off during the year. It's the month after Summer League and free agency, and it's the month before the lead up to training camp. So, you know, that was just kind of my logical guess, and it ended up being right. Yeah. But I thought something would happen by now.
I know it's going to happen next Monday.
What's that?
Cronin's going to get up on the mic, and he's just going to talk about how they're trying to win around Dame, and they're 100% committed to Dame. And then he's just going to start laughing, and everyone, all the reporters will laugh, and then it'll break the ice, and then, like, he'll get a bunch of softball questions after that.
Yeah, you think that happens if he trades him, or if he keeps him?
No, like, he's still on the roster, and he's still saying, yeah, I'm committed to building around Dame.
At least he'd have a sense of humor, man. At least he'd have a sense of humor about it. And regarding this situation, like, I think we're gonna have to talk about, and we've talked about this before, but the whole OG trade package. I've been tweeting about it quite a bit and responding to people, just having conversations with people, and I am not a fan of OG Anunoby being the focal point of a Damian Lillard trade. And it's funny because what if people who have had Cronin's back, what have they said? They've said, you can't make the deal with Miami. Their deal, even their best offer, their best realistic offer is not good enough, right? If he ends up taking a Heat trade, I feel like the tables flip a little bit. There's a chance I end up defending Cronin, because I think at this point, Miami, if they give up 4 firsts, right, and that's, you know, maybe opening up a third by changing the protections on the pick they owe OKC, flipping Tyler Hero to a 4th team for a first-round pick, I think 4 firsts, Jovic and Hawkes is better than like OG Anunoby and 2 firsts. And the main reason for that is I think Miami's picks in 2028 and 2030 could be much better than people give them credit for. Dame will be in his late 30s. Jimmy Butler will be 38 and 40 both those years. Pat Riley, who knows if he's still a part of the Heat by then? I would bet not. So that team could be on the downswing without the ability to bounce back like they have in some previous years where they've been kind of a mediocre team, because that's what people say. Miami has always been a playoff team the past 20 years. They've only missed the playoffs like 6 times out of the last, I don't know how many seasons, over 2 decades. So, but every team has its time to struggle. Even Golden State had a down year. San Antonio Spurs just got the number 1 pick. Every team has its time to struggle. I do think that those Miami picks, by the time Scoot and Sharp are ready to contend, maybe with a contending roster around them, if we can build it out properly, to be able to potentially add top 5 picks to an already contending roster seems like the right mix to be able to win a championship to me. And that's really what this whole rebuild is about, is maximizing a championship. So I don't think the Miami Heat package is as bad as people say. And then regarding OG, to put it shortly, we'll expand on this, but basically you're going to have him on a 1-year deal. He could walk for nothing, and all you end up with is 2 firsts. I think Toronto is more likely to be better after a Dame trade 5 years down the line, 7 years down the line than Miami, solely because they have Scotty Barnes. So as far as Toronto's package goes, I don't think it's OG Anunoby, or I don't think it's Scotty Barnes in the deal. I think it is OG Anunoby and 2 firsts, maybe Grady Dick in there. I just, OG Anunoby, if they could flip him for 3 firsts, that might be a better deal, and then I understand if Portland takes it. But valuing OG Anunoby as the focal point in the deal means that he either walks for nothing at the end of the year, or we flip him at the deadline for less than we could probably flip him now because he'll be closer to free agency and even more of a rental, or we keep him and overpay him just like we overpaid Jeremy Grant a little bit. A lot of people say we've overpaid Yusuf Nurkic, Norman Powell, Anthony Simons. Like, Blazers' history is to overpay a little bit for their own free agents.
Or you have to.
We have to. If you're on I don't expect this team to make a ton of noise next year, and then I expect OG Anunoby to have a robust free agent market. There's a good chance that Portland ends up having to give OG Anunoby a max contract. And then if you still have Jeremy Grant, you're paying $70 million a year combined for a forward duo where neither of them is a star, and the core of your team in Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharp are 20 and 21 years old and not ready to contend yet. Like, I just don't like that part of it. I know a lot of people want OG Anunoby because that's a better player than you can get back from Miami. I just think timeline-wise, for maximizing a championship, not a fan of OG Anunoby. So if it comes down to they end up taking a Miami package, it'll be interesting to see, because I think a lot of people just assume we want to hate on everything Cronin does, but we don't. And we've set the standard for what he should get back. It might be something where I'm defending the trade if it's with Miami.
Yeah, I think Mind Over Matter was asking this earlier, but I do think that in terms of what I've heard the Blazers are interested in, for some reason they do want win-now players. So I think, like, if you're just trying to predict what they want, like, I could definitely see them going after OG and then just having the confidence that they could re-sign him and stuff like that. So yeah, I do think if that is what happens, that they will frame it that way. Like, we think we're going to be good next year, and we think OG is that small forward we've been missing for years, which is true, but like, it doesn't necessarily, like, I don't understand, like, tanking 2 years to be bad and then not trying to put any pieces around Dame, but then when Dame wants out, then you try to build a winning team. Like, that'll always, like, kind of rub me the wrong way that's their approach. Like, instead of, we have Scoot, we have Sharp, they're both year either 1 or year 2 of their rookie deals. You most likely will be able to sign them to second contracts, because most players don't end up accepting the qualifying offer unless you lowball them. So you probably have them for at least half of their second contract before they become unhappy if that's the case. I'm not saying they will or won't. I'm just saying, like, worst case scenario, you probably have them for 5 and 6 years respectively. So, in my opinion, you should be looking at that 5 or 6 year window and not be short-sighted and be like, oh, let's try to prove everyone wrong this year, because I feel like that'll lead to 2 or 3 years down the road you not having the right pieces or the right assets to then go all in. And it's not about whether the Miami picks or if it ends up being the Toronto 2028 and 2030 picks, like if those end up being top picks or not. I mean, it's possible, but you also have several years to trade those as unprotected picks, along with if you find a way to free up your future first, or each year that goes by, you get another pick in the future you could possibly trade. That's past the 2028 pick that we owe Chicago. Or maybe you make the playoffs one of those years and then it's done, and then you free up all your future picks that way. And then on top of that, so if you make the playoffs like 3 years from now and still have multiple picks in the future, you'd have all your own picks plus at least 2 extra picks, if not more. And then, then you could start building your team around those picks as assets, not necessarily needing to be high picks or whatever. You could make a play for a Paul George in his prime or something, that equivalent of what the Clippers did, without having to give up, Scooter Sharp and add to them, which is unlike what they did with Dame, and they never quite could pull that off. So that's just my personal opinion, is you're sacrificing a longer window and a possible higher championship ceiling to be a slightly better team or to make the playoffs this year. And I will never understand that approach. Like we saw New Orleans a couple years ago, when they traded for CJ and stuff, just basically go all in on making the playoffs that one year, and they ended up making the playoffs and it was fun. But then last year they have injuries and they don't make the playoffs and stuff. And now, will Zion ever be healthy? And do they have the right makeup? Is CJ, like the right answer is lead guard there? So like they have all these questions now when they could have just kept it going and possibly been, added a couple more young pieces or whatever, and been in a great position right now. I mean, if they don't make the playoffs that year and get 2 top 10 picks, they might have Sharp right now, right? And they might have they could still have Dyson Daniels too, because they had potentially 2 lotto picks in that draft. So it's for me, I just have a hard time with any trades, but I also recognize that like you're also trying to sell the trade as you winning it, and not just taking a crappy offer from a team because your star demanded he goes to that team. So I understand the dynamics of that, but that's why I think the Ayton thing was so perfect. And I didn't want Ayton either, but that's why I was so confident last Thursday when the Ayton stuff came up, because it just made sense. Okay, you can say we've waited 2.5 months, but we got Ayton out of it, and we still got all the assets from the Heat and all that kind of stuff. So you and Ayton's young enough and still under contract for several more years, so you could have possibly done some things with him, whether it's trade him or build around him as your young core. So like it kind of made sense, and I just thought that would have been a home run for Joe, because you already had parts of the fan base that's been defending him say, oh, all you guys who have been criticizing him are going to look so silly, right? Like when they thought that we were getting Ayton. So I Yeah, I mean, it's just so weird, but I understand like it'll look like a much better trade, and I'm not debating whether OG's a good player or whatever. He's a great player. He's one of the best defenders in the league, and that's something that we've really needed out of our small forward for a long time. I'm so like over the mindset of trying to win right now because like that wouldn't be on my mind if I was building the team out. It's hard for me to think of that being what they're looking for, even though it seems to be what they are.
Yeah, it made sense, and that's the thing is if you're not giving up much in terms of future assets to get Ayton, say you're flipping Nurk to Phoenix and Miami decides to trade Caleb Martin there and that gets Ayton for you. Like, I understand that. The problem with getting an OG Anunoby is you could probably flip him for 2 first-round picks right now, maybe even 3, who knows. And that's kind of where I'd rather just take that than take OG Anunoby. You know, if we could get 2 firsts or maybe 3 firsts for Ayton, then I would want to flip Ayton for that, you know. And it's not about sides here when trying to analyze the return for the Blazers. Like I said it even before free agency, if we go the route of trading Dame, I'm ready to just embrace the rebuild. Shoot. On draft night, when we made it obvious that Scoot Henderson wasn't getting traded, I didn't want Chris Murray at the 23rd pick because I wanted a more boomer bust high upside guy, because I think in a rebuild it makes more sense to take chances at guys with high upside compared to guys that are probably only going to be role players. And that's why I wanted a guy like Leonard Miller, because I felt like he had more upside. So from the beginning, even before Dame requested only Miami, I've specifically outlined the type of Dame trade that would make sense for the Blazers in order to maximize, in my opinion, maximize their odds to win a championship over the next 10 years. Because I don't want this team to be good. I want this team to be great. I want this team to be playing into June. I want to be doing post-game shows in June. I want to be doing 100 post-game shows a year because we play that deep into the playoffs. It's just very, very simple. Like, that's where my preferences lie. I understand that fans don't want to keep dealing with tanking years. I fully understand that because we're sitting here struggling to do post-game shows in tanking years. Like, I mean, how many times did we go live the last 2 years and talking about, nothing to analyze from this game, we're tanking, so let's just hang out with chat. We've had tons of post-game shows like that. I want to be past that, but more than I don't want to tank, I want to win playoff series. So if tanking next year or the year after helps us win playoff series down the line when Scoot and Sharp are in their primes, like, I am cool with that. I'm cool with taking that route. So I understand both sides of it. I understand why a fan might want OG Anunoby, because that's been a guy that this fan base has wanted for quite a while, so we finally have him. And I understand. So
to get the Roco treatment.
Yeah, and I understand, like, next year's team is going to be exciting, so, you know, if they are better than everybody expected, maybe they can be a playoff team, maybe they can make some noise, right? But I just feel like that's a bit too optimistic, you know, and that'd be great because that would mean Scoot is maybe an all-star as a rookie, right? But that's the problem is you know, before now it was getting a guy like OG Anunoby and DeAndre Ayton does not make the Blazers a contender around Dame. So how can we have hope that getting those two guys is going to mean the Blazers are a contender with Scoot and Sharp in the next 3 to 4 years, right? Like, maybe those guys are heads and shoulders above a backcourt of Dame and Anthony Simons, but Dame, in my opinion, is the best Blazer ever, right? Like, sure, those guys fit a little bit better, but man, that's a tall order. If Dame has no shot of contending with those two guys, Scoot and Sharp have to be much, much better to be a contender than Dame and Anthony Simons is. So it's just interesting how the discourse has gone from, like, there's no chance to build a contender around Dame this offseason to, yeah, let's get OG Anunoby and DeAndre Ayton to pair with Scoot and Sharp, because in the end, I don't think that team is a contender. I think that team would be searching for a star caliber front court player. Maybe in the best world, OG Anunoby and DeAndre Ayton both take a jump, and both of them are those types of guys. But I think it's more likely to be able to get that type of guy by embracing the rebuild and development the next couple of years and getting high draft picks, and then having a boatload of assets, spending the next couple of years accumulating assets, and then maybe having really good picks in 2028 and 2030 via the Miami Heat, maybe swap rights in 2027 and 2029 if they're bad. I think it's more likely to get that star frontcourt player that I think this team is ultimately going to need to be a true top tier team in the NBA. So that's just how I focus on this rebuild. It has nothing to do with wanting them to take a Miami trade because it's Miami, or wanting them to not take a Toronto trade because Dame doesn't want Toronto. It's all about what maximizes this team's chance to win a championship, and I think they're going to need a star in the front court. I think it's more likely to find one going with the Miami package than maybe going for OG Anunoby and DeAndre Ayton right now.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this a lot yesterday to explain why I'd want picks and expirings over players like OG. And here's why. If you want OG, why not trade for him now? Get as many picks as you can and other assets, future stuff for Dame, and then go sign him next summer. Like, go get him next summer. Like, overpay for him to come, just like you would have to overpay for him to stay if he comes here. And then if he doesn't come, like, you can still use that cap space to take on more assets or whatever. So I would be lining it up. Plus, then you're not as good this year, so your draft pick's better, so you get potentially a better, like, unless you got super lucky with the lottery odds or whatever, then you could do that. But so right now, I'd be looking at OG Anunoby, if that's your guy, and Nicholas Claxton, who's he just turned 24 or something. Like, he's 23 or 24-ish, somewhere in there. He's a free agent next summer as well, right? So you trade Dame, get Lowry back. So basically Dame minus, Jovic or Hawkes or whoever the young players are, come off your books next summer, and you save all that cap space there. Okay. And then maybe in that trade you make Miami take Yusuf Nurkic or someone, or you trade him to another team. But getting back Ayton kind of throws a wrench into this because he's on a max contract, so it's kind of hard to do this. But then you trade Jeremy Grant for, like, I don't know, expiring contract like Tobias Harris and a first or something at the deadline, right? So you add another first for Jeremy and get an expiring, right?
Yeah.
And you added all those picks for Dame and the young players, and now you're sitting there with like $80 million in cap space. You could offer 25 or 30 to both of them and still have cap space left over. And now you added both of them and you have all these assets, right? Yeah. So that's the kind of team building I would look at. I feel like you're wasting assets to go after people this year when you could set yourself up to get those guys and overpay for a Claxton, who I think would be absolutely perfect in this lineup with Scoot and Sharp and stuff. Like, I think that would be perfect. So, like, I don't understand why we're trying to win and make the playoffs this year when you could set yourself up to have just a phenomenal summer next offseason and set yourself up for a championship window for a decade.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. To play devil's advocate, the counterpoint against that is, and I've seen this numerous times, and it's a legit argument. Guys only want to be here if they get traded here and then get retained, right? Like, guys aren't going to want to come here in free agency. They'd need to be traded here first, see what it's like here, and then we'd have a chance to re-sign them. But with a guy like OG Anunoby, it might come down to only one team gives him a max. Like, I think there will be teams in play, but if it comes down to money, Portland would be a front runner in terms of money. When it comes down to role, like, I mean, Portland does have a lot of offensive players, so you'd probably need to trade Grant and Ant to, like, reasonably promise him a little bit more responsibility than he has in Toronto. But maybe Portland could offer him more role. The thing is I'd rather have more assets and worry about trying to get him to come here than have less assets and worry about him leaving for nothing. Just plain and simple. Because if he doesn't come here, if we take the Miami deal and then trade Grant and have this cap space and he doesn't come here, guess what? We have cap space for other guys. Maybe it's somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. And you still have all those assets. Whereas if you lose him for nothing, sure, that opens up cap space, but you just end up with less picks. So I think it's a much safer route to wait on OG Anunoby. Even if it's less likely he's playing here 2 years from now, I think it's more safe to wait for him to hit free agency than to trade for him right now, because if he's not here 2 years from now, at least you have more assets. And then you can always try and sign other pieces if he doesn't sign here. So in the end, like, I just think this organization is not in a position to take on a bunch of risk right now, because the reward is not going to happen, in my opinion, in the next 2 to 3 years. And if the only way they contend in the next 2 to 3 years if Scoot and Sharp are legitimate all-stars in the next 2 years. But I'd kind of just rather go the route of like, okay, if those guys blow up into legitimate all-stars in the next couple years, I want a bunch of assets so we can maybe add another star to them, or kind of cherry pick players then. I just feel like it makes more sense to worry about surrounding this backcourt with players like an OG Anunoby and DeAndre Ayton down the line once they've proven that they can carry a team to contention, than to do it right now before Scoot Henderson's ever seen the floor, and where we'd be maybe losing out on assets because we elect to go with an OG Anunoby who has 1 year left on his deal and could leave for nothing next offseason, compared to maybe waiting on him and taking the Heat package. Yeah,
and I mean, yes, Portland has been historically a place where it's tough to get free agents. But, like, OG seems like the kind of guy who, well, under the new CBA, I think he's going to wait to sign an extension, because I think it jumped up to the amount you can give, like, if this was Jeremy Grant with 1 year left on his contract this year that we traded for him, I think we could have given him more than that $412 million maximum offer we could have offered him prior to free agency. So I think that jumped up a little bit. So maybe you can get something done, but I still think it's under $30 million for OG, like his extension, if he signed it, versus waiting. And like you said, he could end up with a little more as a max contract player. So, but he does seem like the type that will wait for free agency because he wants to feel like a team really wants him, and a team's going to promise him a big role and stuff like that. So I do feel like he's the type of player, if you from day one targeted him and offered him a max contract or close to that, you probably could win him over and get him to come. But Claxton, I have no idea. He's made $8 million the last couple of years. So that's a case where he might be excited to get paid. The Nets could certainly pay him. They'll have his bird rights and all that kind of stuff. But maybe they don't want to offer him $25 to $30 million with their situation, especially if they're not good this year. Maybe they have underperform and don't live up to Mikhail's untouchable and this is like such a good roster. Maybe it doesn't work out. So yeah, like I don't know if Nick, if you can get Claxton out of Brooklyn, but when you have a ton of cap space, you can certainly try. And that's how I would go about trying to identify centers that fit more with your roster.
Yeah, you can take shots with no downside.
Mm-hmm.
You can take shots with no downside. If he doesn't sign, okay, so what? Guess what? We'll have cap space the following year then, for whoever's available then. Guess what? We still have a bunch of picks and assets. Guess what? If we just trade Dame for Jovic, Hawkes, however many firsts from the Heat, we're probably not going to be too good next year. We could have a top 3 pick in the draft. Maybe we get Alexander Sarr in the draft. And I mean, I think he's going to be one of the best centers in the league once he hits his prime. Like, from the little bit that I've seen, a couple of games of his, like, he has all the tools that you would bet on in a big man. He can knock down some threes. He's mobile, he's athletic, he has good shot blocking instincts, he's quick off the floor, he can defend on the perimeter a bit, he can handle the ball a little bit, show some flashes there. Like, for a center with legitimate size, like, he's listed as, I've seen him listed at 7'1", who knows what his actual height is, but he's like, has legitimate size for a center. That's the type of tools I think you kind of bet on. And guess what? You get that guy in there, and if he's the truth, he's on a rookie deal too, so you still have all that cap space. But now maybe you've solved your center position long term. And if he can develop into what I think he can develop into, I think he'd end up being the perfect big man, perfect center for when Scoot and Sharp are ready to contend. So that's just kind of how I look at, look at next year. Like, I'm not hoping for the Blazers to lose games at the start of the year. If they actively start tanking like they have the past couple of years and make it obvious that they want to lose games, then okay, sure. But basically, I just think next year needs to be focusing on development of Scoot, Sharp, and Anthony Simons. Anthony Simons, maybe if he takes a step, maybe it's easier to trade him for what you should be able to get for him, right? Because I think his trade market is a little bit lower than what it should be right now. It feels like the rest of the league is sleeping on him. Yeah. So if he can take a step and look like a true star, and a team is desperate for a guard at the deadline, like, the development of Anthony Simons could pay dividends if you want the backcourt of Scoot and Sharp for the long term. So even if you don't think Scoot, Sharp, and Ant should all be here long term, I think the development of all three of those guys to start next season is what is most important, because the Blazers are going to need Scoot to become the best version he can become to probably contend down the line. They're going to need Sharp to fulfill all his potential. That is the most important thing regarding this team at this point. So, getting a guy like OG Anunoby, who reportedly wants more offensive responsibility, if the Blazers end up trading for him, they're probably going to try and convince him to stay, right? Right? Isn't that the whole point? You trade for OG Anunoby with 1 year left on his deal and you convince him to stay. Well, in order to do that, you might have to give him more offensive responsibility. Does that come at a detriment to the three guards that you're trying to develop? And does that make your pick next year worse? We've already talked about how it would be less future assets if he leaves. I just don't like that. So I think they need to focus on development. And if they are bad next year, that's completely fine. You get a high draft pick.
If they trade for him without wanting to re-sign him long term, that's like the dumbest thing they could do. So I know you didn't mean it that way, but
it was more so like they're going to try and keep him, and in order to try and keep him, they're probably going to have to give him more responsibility on offense than he's had in Toronto, meaning that you're focusing more on putting the ball in his hands than your three guards.
And in order for the three guards to succeed, I think Sharp has to play at least 12 minutes at small forward. So you're already down to 36 minutes there. And then you have Thibault. Like, why would you re-sign Thibault then? There's still Nas back there if he ever does anything. Not that those guys have to play, but it's just kind of weird to have those guys on your roster still. If you're playing or paying OG all that money and paying Jeremy all that money, I don't know. It's kind of weird. But so I had a question, or there was a question in chat about it was from AJ. What's up, AJ? I said, will the Dame situation impact if we'll be able to sign people in the future? What I think it'll impact is, say, a guy like Scoot is in this exact same situation in Portland, hasn't really done a whole lot or had a whole lot of playoff success, and they're promising him, oh, well, sign this extension, we'll build a winner around you, and then he could be like, well, that's what you told Dame, that kind of stuff might happen. But in terms of free agency, if you have a ton of cap space and you're offering it to someone, unless they're of the same agent or as someone that was involved in this trade. Aaron Goodwin doesn't have the biggest client list, so it probably won't factor in too much. As long as you keep Clutch happy right now, I think you're okay, which they seem to be doing with Nurk and Chauncey and all that stuff. But I think short of some of your own players that were here through that, not trusting the front office, I really don't. I don't see a situation where if like Portland offers OG a max contract, he would turn it down because of them the way they treated Dame. I think that most athletes would just take the money.
Yeah. Let me think a couple of donos. Shout out to Gray Hughes Investigates, $10 donation. Says, just drove to Delphi, Indiana with my wife to be in a documentary on the CW network and to view the crime scene in the Libyan Abbey case. Was gone for 9 days and just got back. Man, 4,400-mile drive. Thank you, Gray, for the $10 dono. Congrats on doing something with CW. That's pretty big. So, keep investigating,
job, Gray.
Man. Keep investigating. And a shout out to Jack M, $2 donation, says, how do you view Grady Dick versus Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic's prospects? I would take Grady Dick over Jovic. I would take Grady Dick over Jaime Jaquez. I would take both Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez over Grady Dick. Is how I view it.
Yeah. I don't think any of those three are really changing like the direction of the rebuild or like gonna be the difference between winning a Dame trade or not. I think they're all like nice pieces to add, but I don't necessarily think any of them are good enough to warrant like arguing over which one's better. I think they're all kind of in that same boat where they could be all right, space the floor. Hawkins could, I guess, be okay on defense, but they're all, I think, maybe you could say they're higher end role players, but they're all role players in my mind. I don't think there's anyone that's going to like break out of those three and be a star in the NBA. Very solid players, but yeah, not like star level prospects or anything.
Yeah. At this point, going the rebuild route, I want as many shots at upside. Mm-hmm. And that's, if we have multiple picks in the first round next year, especially if we have multiple picks, then I think it makes sense to just take those shots at upside. If we're a team trying to contend and needed to fill a role, needed a backup power forward, okay, a Chris Murray type prospect makes sense. But in the end, I think the Blazers are going to have to find a star in the front court to pair with Scoot and Sharp, and having as many chances as possible in regards to getting that guy makes sense. And that's the thing. It's basically, in my opinion, you can break it down to just odds. And obviously it's not quite this simple, but I'm more so painting this picture just to hopefully explain this. If you have a 5% chance at getting a future all-star front court player with a pick between 21 and 30 in the draft, the more picks you have in that range and the more players like that you draft, your odds of finding someone there that can be your starting forward, starting center, that's an all-star caliber player, your odds of finding that guy go up. Okay, so people will say picks in the late 20s aren't worth much. If you have a bunch of them, say the Blazers strike out in free agency and have a bunch of cap space, or maybe aren't planning on pursuing guys in free agency because they're fully embracing the rebuild and take on salary for first-round picks and increase just the numbers of rolls of the dice that they get late in the first round, then you're increasing your odds of finding that star caliber front court player. Just look at Toronto. They drafted Pascal Siakam with the 27th pick. They drafted OG Anunoby with the 23rd pick in the 2017 draft. Jared Allen went 21st in that draft as well. He ended up making an all-star game. So that's kind of where I don't think it's something that late first-round picks are completely worthless. When getting back picks for Dame, obviously you want to try and get back high draft picks because in terms of value, that's what the Blazers deserve. The Heat picks are a little bit of a risk. Maybe they can rebound after Dame and Jimmy Butler. Maybe they can sign a couple free agents and maybe those picks aren't high. But the upside of those picks because they're unprotected and because Miami could legitimately be bad in 2028, 2029, and 2030 because of the age of Butler and Damian Lillard and Pat Riley, you're giving yourself a chance at being able to draft a stud there. You're just increasing the odds of getting that star caliber front court player. And I truly think that's what it's going to come down to. And it's kind of the same sort of debates as we always had around Damian Lillard, is how can you get that star in the front court next to him? Mm-hmm. There was always the arguments that we'd hear, like, how many teams have won championships without a star forward? Well, okay. And right now, in order to do things better than we did under Damian Lillard, it should all be about finding that star forward down the line. OG Anunoby is really, really, really good, but he's not a star. Maybe he can take that leap like Mikal Bridges did, but, it's kind of hard to bet on that, and OG just doesn't seem as primed to take that sort of step as Mikal was. Mikal was already showing huge steps with Phoenix before he got traded compared to the season before. Statistically, a lot of his offensive numbers were up. He was averaging like 19 a game with Phoenix, which was by far a career high. So I think Mikal's just a little bit better with the ball in his hands, a little better ball handler, a little better shot creator than OG Anunoby is. And I think that makes a world of difference. So, yeah, I'm focused on maximizing the odds to win a championship. I think that can be broken down to maximizing the odds of finding like an all-star caliber player in the front court to pair with Scoot and Sharp, and then the other two starters. That's when you find the role players that fit really well and play both ends of the court.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I look at it this way in terms of the picks. The Dame thing ruined the draft last year for me personally, and probably a lot of you. But how fun would that be to every year have a pick like in the top 10 and a pick in the early 20s and a pick in the, an early second round pick and stuff. It made the draft process so much cooler because there were so many ranges we could have had where we had to scout prospects and things like that. And then it opens up all these trade possibilities, trading up, trading down, trading out of the draft, or moving them for players that you like. Look at, Dallas gets off of Berton's contract and then ends up getting a pick later in the draft. Only had to move down 2 spots, still gets Lively, but then gets off Berton's contract and uses that trade exception they get from that to get Rashawn Holmes and another pick in the 20s, so they get Omax. And that kind of maneuvering, it's just fun to me. And I think in a rebuild, or if you're going young, I'd much rather have fun talking about for 5 years what we're going to do with a 2028 Miami first. We can talk about that all the time. Every offseason we can talk about it. Every trade deadline we can talk about it if there's a player available that we want, having these assets and stuff. Whereas for the last several years we've talked about how we can't trade a first right now unless we free it up somehow. So there has to be a secondary trade just to free up a first to trade. So, I'm intrigued. I love that kind of stuff, to have multiple picks in several drafts coming up, and then also the possibility of swaps. And if you would have told Boston or Brooklyn that those picks would end up being as good as they were, I know that's not guaranteed or anything, but just the intrigue of oh my goodness, what if Miami's really bad just one of those 4 years and you have their pick? That makes it all worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny how first round pick swap in 2029 just is made out to be such a crummy asset. It could be absolutely nothing. If Miami's better than us, then we probably have bigger problems. But if Miami's better than us, obviously that becomes nothing because we don't swap picks. If Miami's the worst team in the league, that specific year in 2029, if Miami's the worst team in the league, that's the best asset that you could possibly get from a Dame package. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's a wide range, and yes, it's a bit of a risk, but trying to keep OG Anunoby as a bit of a risk too. If I'm going to take a risk, I want the upside of getting a star. So I want the upside of getting a guy that maybe is an all-NBA guy. So that's where I look at those Miami unprotected picks, and it has that level of upside. We can argue about how likely it is based on a number of factors, but it has that level of upside.
Miami culture, right? As Jimmy points out. Okay, but is that tied to Pat Riley? Like, what? We don't know what's going to happen once Riley retires or whatever, or gets older and isn't quite as sharp anymore. I mean, there's already that rumor that last trade deadline he fell asleep and possibly missed out on a trade because he was taking a nap. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's hilarious to think about. But
well, also let me add to that. People never thought the Spurs were going to be bad because they had Greg Popovich.
Yeah,
they were just one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, but I mean, LA is a destination city, right? How is that different than the Lakers? And they had what 3 straight picks at number 2, including a lottery pick with LeBron on the roster. Actually, multiple lottery picks because the first year he was there, they were in the lottery, and the year that New Orleans got their pick and took Dyson Daniels last year, they were in the lottery. So like how is Miami just the magic place that gets free agents when LA traditionally gotten way more free agents than Miami has, and they've had tons of high picks. So like, and they're not going to have Jimmy or Dame, and if they do, they're in their late 30s, so they won't be as good. And then you literally could strip them of every asset between pick swaps and actual picks, second rounders, and young players, to where they have no ability to use anything for several years. And like 2 years from now, I guess they could free up a 2032 pick. But like, that's the earliest they could free up a first is 2 years from now, if you got everything you could from them. So like yes, they might have some cap space and could sign free agents, but they're not going to be able to build a very good roster. So I don't know how that's not like a viable thing, or why people just assume those picks are going to be good when we have no idea like who's even going to be running that team or running our team in 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing: is it's a risk versus reward assessment. If you assess it differently, that's fine. You know, the types of arguments I can't stand are, well, you just want him to go to Miami. That's why you think that way. It's not about that at all. You know, it's a risk versus reward assessment. We are happy to have a conversation with anyone who disagrees on that assessment, because I think it can be an enlightening conversation, because it's kind of a complicated situation when you're trying to build a contender 3 to 5 years in the future. You know, there's multiple steps that need to be taken. It's not just something where this Dame trade is going to make us a contender on its own, you know. And there was a comment in chat saying, basically, I can't find it, but I'm paraphrasing. Basically, it was, if the Miami picks end up being Nasir Little and Keon Johnson level players, is it worth it? One, it's a high risk, high reward. Like, it might be something that is not meaningful whatsoever. It might be something that means all the world. It might be a future Hall of Famer, right? Like, in terms of risk versus reward, yeah, that's obviously the downside. The upside is you maybe get an all-star with a 2028 pick to add to a team that's already contending. So there's a wide range there. In terms, you know, hindsight bias will be 2020. But in terms of just analyzing things right now, like, yes, that's still worth it, because you're taking a risk that's justified to take. But two, the Blazers, if they took the Heat package, the goal should be to build a contender by the time those picks even matter, right? It should be to build a contender over the next 4 years without utilizing those picks, right? Because you already have a pretty good start with Scoot, Sharp, and Simons. Even if Simons isn't here long term, you're going to be able to get assets that can be put in play to build out the roster in the future. If the Blazers took that Heat package, my whole goal for this team would be to build a contender without using those assets by the time those assets come into play. Because if you do that, if you have a contending level roster, and then you have those picks, you'll be able to add to it however you want. You might be able to put them in play for an all-star to become a super team, right? Which I know sounds kind of like a foreign concept in Portland, but that is the one way where you actually get a super team in Portland, is if you build a contending roster and have a bunch of assets to go out and trade for a star on top of it. Like, even if you don't move those picks, if they end up being high, Scoot and Sharp will still be, 25, 26? You can draft a stud at 19, 20 years old, and you have a very long window, right? And if you're drafting at the top of the draft, most guys will come in ready to have some sort of impact. And when you're drafting top 3, even top 5, as an organization, you expect to be drafting a guy who's going to become a star. So that's the thing. I want a super team. I want a team that's like looked at as the championship favorite going into the season, because I've never had that. We've never had that. So how do we get there is the question for me. I don't want to settle for just being like, oh, maybe this year we can contend if everything goes right. I want to be a team that's like, wow, those guys are the cream of the crop. The Blazers are the cream of the crop in the league. They are the favorite in the West. I want people predicting us to win championships, which maybe they don't because we're Portland, but I want to be good enough. I want this team to be good enough that people can't ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's how I feel.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll take questions. We've explained our philosophy. Our analysis of this trade is going to be based on this philosophy. Not any sort of bias towards either side, or even based on our frustrations with Joe Cronin. Our analysis of the trade will be of the trade and how it affects us moving forward.
So there's a couple things about Toronto that I still want to bring up.
Yeah.
One is, I wouldn't put it past them to basically screw over Miami. Like, only trade for Dame if it's, as long as they don't have to go Barnes, just to mess with Miami, like, and make it so they don't get him. And in turn, I was thinking about this because, like, how good is a team with Barnes, Dame, and Siakam and Pirtle as like your main four? Like, it's pretty good, I think. It's probably one of the best teams Dame's been on. But, like, I just had a hard time, like, thinking of that as, like, a championship roster. Like, I don't think that's as seamless of a fit as Dame, Jimmy, Bam. Because I feel like those three guys all are just, like, perfect complementaries to one another. But at the same time, we're in a situation where if Philly doesn't get Dame, they're, like, there's all this talk about Dame. Like, hardly anyone's talking about Harden right now. Like, is he going to report to camp next week? Like, he promised he would never play for a team that's led by Daryl Morey again. Like, what's going to happen with them? Like, I think Toronto, if they lose Harden and don't get much back for him, or Harden sits out, I think that Toronto team would be better than Philly. And I think they're better than Miami if they don't have Dame, because Miami's, like, you could argue whether they're slightly better or slightly worse than they were last year, but up until the playoffs, they weren't good last year. So that's still, like, probably a slightly above 500 team. So, like, Boston obviously added Porzingis, and kept Jaylen Brown, so they're probably the favorites. And then you got Milwaukee still, but Middleton didn't look great last year. Drew is retiring in 2 years now; he's getting up there. So, like, are they better than them? I don't know. You probably still have Miami and Boston as the favorites, and then you have the upcoming teams like New York and Cleveland and stuff I'm probably missing a team that's super obvious, but I think like just thinking of it that way, like if they could somehow either avoid one of Miami or not Miami, Milwaukee or Boston in the first couple rounds and have those two teams play each other, I think they could maybe make a finals, but I don't know if they are like better than Denver or something. You know, like I don't think they're that good, but they could sneak in there.
Yeah, I mean the East is wide open. Here's the thing: is like Miami. The whole notion is they don't have to be desperate or give up their best package because they just made the finals. Right? They just won the East. Well, here's the thing. There's a big difference right now between winning the East and winning an NBA championship because Miami really struggled with Denver. I don't think, maybe they were tired, but I don't think they would have ever beat Denver in a 7-game series. I don't think they would have beat Phoenix. I don't know if they would have beat Golden State. Like, the East is wide open right now. The top-end talent, like Milwaukee looks vulnerable. Middleton has been a little bit injury prone, and I don't know how old he is, like 29, 30. Drew Holiday's getting up there in age. They don't have the greatest depth, in my opinion. I think, DiVincenzo was injury prone when he was there, but, losing him, they're still relying on guys like Pat Connaughton, Joe Ingles in the playoffs. He had some moments, but it was just a little, I don't know. The depth was a little too thin. And it's not like Chris Middleton is consistently playing like an all-star anymore. Drew Holiday was only an all-star last year because of what he can do on the defensive side of the court. So Milwaukee was the favorite in the East last year, and I mean, Miami beat him in the first round, but I don't think Milwaukee was as strong as multiple teams in the West. Philadelphia has all those question marks, as you said. So there's just a big difference between winning the East and winning the championship. And that's the thing for Miami is like, sure, they could go back to the finals again, but do they want to win the Eastern Conference or do they want to win an NBA championship? If they want to win an NBA championship, they need to trade for Dame, in my opinion. I don't think they'll ever win an NBA championship with this core unless they trade for Damian Lillard. And the argument will be, you don't bid against yourself. Well, they're going to have to give up enough to get Damian Lillard, even if they are bidding against their self. Because Portland, with a player under contract for 4 years, can play hardball into the season and into next offseason if they really, really wanted to drag this thing out. So it becomes, okay, do we sit here and worry about Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez, maybe giving up a first-round pick, maybe trading Tyler Hero, who wasn't even a part of their NBA Finals run last year, just because we think we can maybe make it back there? Or do we trade for Dame and have one of the best shots in the league next year at winning a championship because Dame is such a perfect fit there? And in the end, it's up to Miami to value what Dame could do for them enough in order to make it happen. So I've never thought that it should be a situation where Miami is not offering enough because Dame only wants them. Because in the end, Portland is still in control of where Damian Lillard plays next year. And in the end, Miami is still going to have to pay a price, even though there's nobody else at the counter trying to get Dame. But now that it seems like somebody else has maybe shown up to that counter, now, I mean, there's just no excuse. Yeah, maybe fake shown up. I mean, if Portland is manufacturing all this to leverage Miami because they are not giving up what they should be giving up for Damian Lillard, then Joe Cronin gets his first props from me of this entire offseason.
Yep.
I have been on the record saying that if Miami isn't giving up their best package outside of Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and maybe Caleb Martin, then Portland has to play hardball, and Portland has to play that game of chess. And I've always kind of wondered, is Joe Cronin capable of playing that game of chess? And I think, if it comes down to them making a leverage play to get more out of Miami, I think that might show us something that Joe is maybe capable of that. So, overall, go ahead.
The problem is that we still have a lot of people who are, somewhat close to Joe Cronin and have credentials that say that Miami's best offer isn't good enough still. So, like, even if he does leverage them into giving every single thing possible down to that 1 second-round pick they can trade in every swap and 4 firsts, and you get a good player back for Hero in a trade and all this stuff, like, Portland could still say that's not enough. Like, it's just so weird.
Yeah.
But those
Tori knows chess. Yeah, I do. What's up? What were you gonna say?
I was also gonna say those same people say, like, I saw several people saying this, like, Miami doesn't have the assets, like their package will never be good enough. And then their next tweet is, Miami just needs to, like, actually go all in if they want Dame. Like, they need to actually go for Dame. Like, they're not even trying to get him. It's like, well, you just said, like, even if they did, they don't have the pieces to get him. So, like, what is it? Like, are they supposed to go all in, or do they not have an all-in package that works for Portland?
Yeah.
And I think Miami just wants to know the answer to that question. Like, if they gave him a Godfather offer, would Portland do it?
Yeah. I mean, this whole conversation dives back into just the mess between what's been communicated, what hasn't been communicated. Is Portland and Miami actually talking? Is it Hero to a third team? What might that team be? Like, it's just, that whole mess at this point. I am very, very upset with Portland if they specifically are trying not to trade Dame to Miami, because while they can be unhappy with the way that Dame has handled this situation, right? And I'm not even going to get into how they've handled this situation. Even if they're unhappy about how Dame has handled this situation, in the end, your options are what your options are, and you have to take the best option for the team, right? Like, because I've seen a lot of people argue that the Blazers have to do what's best for themselves. They can't just trade Dame where he wants to go. But that's, for some people, has shifted into the Blazers should specifically trade Dame anywhere else but Miami, even if it's worse for the team. That's not a common opinion, but I've seen it. And if the Blazers feel that way, if the Blazers are upset to the point where they are making a move off emotion and it's not specifically what's best for the team in the long run, and they're specifically trying to spite Dame, that is extremely frustrating to me. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm saying if that is the case, very disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, this goes back to, because I keep seeing the whole one team thing is limiting them. Okay. So why then did you wait to trade Dame? Like, when you drafted Scoot, or when you decided, whatever day that was, whether that was at the draft or like, I believe several weeks before the draft, from that moment on, you could have secretly been shopping him and found a home for him without him ever being able to request a trade to one team or make that public or whatever, and then just move on. So, like, Cronin himself has said that they didn't entertain moving Dame until he requested out. So, like, what? Why did you not try to get value or see what his value was prior to you deciding to go the young route? To me, that will always be the mistake, but people will just keep blaming Dame without ever asking Cronin that, just like they don't ask him why he signed a mid-level player that hard capped us last year that needed core surgery and you didn't know when he was going to be available. Like no one ever asked him these questions. It doesn't make sense. But, like, if you would have, even if it was to Miami, like, even if you talked to Dame beforehand and he knew and he told you he wanted to go to Miami, you could have been like, hey, so we're considering, rebuilding. But like obviously if we make Dame available, he's gonna command a lot. So give us a good offer. Like maybe right from the beginning, Miami gives you their Godfather offer, and you don't have to worry about them lowballing you with Shiro and 2 firsts like it's reported today, which I think is crap. But yeah, I think that's one aspect of it that I still think Joe's getting a pass on, is just the fact that he never played that process out or planned on what would have happened had Dame. You had to have known Dame was going to either want you to uphold what you've done for other players at the very least and get him to where he wants to go, or he was going to use his leverage as one of the top 75 players of all time to try and force his way to a certain situation.
Yeah. Now people will say, well, Cronin wanted to keep Dame and that's why he waited and didn't know it was coming. I just think if he didn't know it was coming, that just shows an utter lack of foresight.
Dame literally said, "It's if you keep the picks, it's not my route." Like he literally said that. So you were calling his bluff then, which makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, and after preaching transparency, you would think that they had enough of a line of communication where Cronin would understand where Dame stood on their moves.
Yeah. And one other thing about the Toronto situation, I mentioned earlier that Aaron Goodwin has not the biggest list of clientele, but do you know who one of his clients is?
Who?
DeMar DeRozan.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened in Toronto with DeMar DeRozan?
That's actually quite interesting. I did not know that. Yeah, so
and Dame's friends with DeMar DeRozan as well.
Ujiri told DeRozan that he was not going to trade DeRozan, and then a week later traded him for Kawhi Leonard. Now, you can't necessarily fault Ujiri for taking that chance and won him a championship, but he specifically told DeRozan he wasn't going to trade him, and then traded him.
Mm-hmm. So I still think Dame reports whatever team he's traded to, but that could be their way out. Like you've messed with one of my clients before.
Yeah. That's actually quite an interesting little tie-in there into the situation.
Goodwin does not like Ujiri.
Yeah.
To say the least.
I think a lot of people don't like Ujiri.
Yeah.
Other GMs hate how much he values his own players. Goodwin definitely, since DeRozan is his client, doesn't like that DeRozan was lied to. So yeah, that's an interesting little tie-in. The other reason why Dame doesn't want to go to Toronto is because the tax rate is ridiculous.
Well, I've heard that's overblown. I think, yeah, what I heard is you have to be like a resident of Toronto a certain amount of days, so it's very easy for players to not, like, basically not have much time in Toronto, like the least amount as possible, and then so like if you're only there for basically training camp and practices and stuff and home games, I think it qualifies for enough of the year to where you're not a full-time Canadian resident. I mean, you still have to pay taxes, but like not as much as you would if you were living there full-time.
You know everything. That's because I've seen a bunch of people say that, and I'm just like, oh yeah, the tax rate. Yeah, I mean, sure, okay, and that's why we have you to set the record straight on it.
And then what other like little theory that might be behind, like, because people, if you believe that Toronto is just being used to leverage Miami here to offer their Godfather package, why would Toronto help Portland out? Well, for one, they want Miami to use as many assets as possible if they're getting Dame no matter what. So that's pretty obvious. But the hidden thing is we have two situations, one in Milwaukee, one in Philadelphia, where a MVP level player could become available in the next couple years. And if Toronto uses Miami now to use up all their assets to where they don't have anything they can trade for those players, it eliminates one of the places that, as Chat put earlier, wants, like, a lot of players want to go to Miami. That's one of the reasons Jimmy's there. Yeah. So that eliminates Miami and the whole they get stars and they just find a way to get stuff done. That completely takes them out of Giannis or Embiid for 7 years basically of stars that could become available. So it could be like a chess versus checkers type play where Ujiri's thinking about Giannis in a year, because that's the guy Ujiri really wants to use all his assets on, is getting Giannis. But and Giannis might be the type that wouldn't mind playing in a city like Toronto. But I think there's a little bit of this, like, Toronto's trying to kind of stick it to Miami a little bit.
If that was true, and Portland ends up extracting everything out of Miami because of that, that's honestly kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that theory makes sense. That's the thing, is all we could do right now is kind of theorize why things are playing out the way we are. I mean, that's as good of a theory as any. Yeah, sorry, I'm just thinking. As I said at the start of the stream, I'm just kind of like logically thinking, because my mind.
No, you said you weren't going to think logically.
Well, what my mind jumps to with something like that is like, okay, who is reporting Toronto's interest then?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And is that like people that are more tied to Portland's front office than anything? Right? I don't know. Because that's the thing. Whenever I come up with theories, it's like, okay, what are the reports, and where do those reports come from? And do they come from a place that would uphold this theory or make this theory more questionable?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I sit here and think about this all the time. I don't know, chat, if you guys sit here and do that as fans. I sit here all the time, man. And that's why that's part of the reason why I talk about this stuff so much, like on Twitter and just online, is there's a lot of different possibilities and intricacies to the situation, and I want to try and think of every theory, and I don't know, I'm just kind of obsessive over trying to get to the bottom of this, because I truly think that even if you are well sourced, you don't necessarily have the full picture, because Portland, if you're a reporter from Toronto and Portland and this theory is true, you're gonna be fed stuff that Toronto's in the lead. Toronto is a serious suitor for Damian Lillard, and that's where you're going to report. So that's why kind of thinking about reports in that way is interesting. And it could be that Toronto is seriously interested in getting Dame. It could be that they're willing to trade OG Anunoby, and that's who Portland wants because they want to win next year. I do kind of have questions about the fact that they, just paid Grant, and it is easier to take on OG Anunoby with his extension, but how much money is Jody really trying to save? Is it just stay out of the tax with the rebuilding team, or is she trying to save even more money? Like, save an extra $20 million if you can. I'm not sure. I think this ownership group is really cheap, and you always have to factor that in. And that's why this is fascinating. That's why we've also covered it so much, is because I don't think you run out of things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we'll take questions from chat.
So Farrell Raleigh Poley says, what if we got Keldon Johnson for Tyler Hero instead of first? See, I mean, he's locked into a contract for a few more years, but to me, he's like in that same group of players that I'm not interested in right now. like I think he's good, but he's not like elevating you to a championship good, and like I'd rather have picks than that.
Yeah. I don't like Keldon Johnson's defense.
I
I don't
did
like him.
I did see or hear a show that said that threw that out there. It was like San Antonio being interested in Hero and possibly be willing to give up Keldon Johnson, but
I just,
he's kind of
I
a
mean,
tweener. Like I don't know what his position is, his best
he,
position.
Keldon Johnson is a tweener, kind of like Sharp is a tweener.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's a little thicker, a little stronger, right? So I think maybe you could use him as a super small ball four. If Keldon Johnson was a better defender, that'd be more intriguing to me.
I and then I keep hearing Utah and Indiana as interested in Hero. I don't understand why either of those teams would. It's the exact thing we've been talking about with OG and now Keldon Johnson and Ayton and all that kind of stuff. Like some of these teams, like they have a bunch of young guards. Like Indiana last year drafted Nemhard and Mathurin, and they got Halliburton, and they have a bunch of other guards that I'm forgetting right now. They're probably trade healed, but they have other guards on their roster. And then Jazz just draft Keontae George and Bryce Sensabaugh. Like I would give them those minutes instead of bringing in Hero to take some of those minutes away. And but I mean that's just me. But if a team like Utah is willing to give a player and a pick for Hero, I mean, yeah, you got to take advantage of that, and that ups Miami's offer, in my opinion.
Yeah. Ryan Johnson asked, do you guys think there's a young center we could potentially target in a 3-team Dame trade, or are we better off waiting and drafting one? I don't think, I don't think Utah would ever consider giving up Walker Kessler for Tyler Hero. They're not going to do that.
Mm-mm.
They don't really have anybody else meaningful. Indiana, they're not going to trade Miles Turner, and he doesn't really count as a young center, I don't think. He's kind of in his prime. What is he, 27 right now?
Something
if I
like
had
that.
to guess off the top of my head, I'll search it because I always have Basketball Reference open. Miles Turner is 27 years old. I guessed right. Nick Richards says Aeromancer. Nick Richards isn't that young either because he played multiple years in college.
There's a group of centers. I would say. I mean, I love Christian Coloco, but he's not. I don't know if he's going to be anything, right? So, so you got Coloco on Toronto. So I would ask for him in that trade. You could also get Precious. He's not really a center, but he's kind of a small ball center / power forward or whatever. And then you have possibly like a Day'Ron Sharp from Brooklyn. And sure, throw Nick Richards in that. But those are all like kind of mid prospects. They're not like high level center prospects, but so I wouldn't mind if you traded with one of those teams getting one of those guys back, but I don't think like they're necessarily for sure going to be an answer to all our problems.
Let's see here. Rob Dryan asks, Tori, do you think Portland could/should try and sneak Zach Collins out of San Antonio for a less valued asset, or are you over trying to bring him back? I think Zach Collins is just severely underrated and has made a leap in terms of his passing ability. Averaged almost 3 assists a game last year in 23 minutes. Still can protect the rim and switch out onto guards and knock down threes. and like that's quite a collection of skills for a center only making like $7 million a year right now. Now, people say he's injury prone. The problem was he had his ankle injury and the surgery was botched on it the first 2 times. That's why he was out for so long. It wasn't multiple injuries. It was one injury that finally got fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's something where he's destined to always miss a bunch of games. He played 63 games last year. So I'd be down if he was gettable. I just don't think he's gettable. Like, San Antonio's already said, yeah, we're starting him next year. And I think they're starting him next to Victor Wembanyama, and that's a really intriguing front court. So I don't think he's gettable. I mean, I'd be down to bring him back, depending on how much it took. Like, would I rather have Hero or him? I'd rather have Zach Collins, but it's just he is 25 already, and he is going to be a free agent. So you do have the question of trying to bring him back, but at least it wouldn't be something where, like, you could otherwise get multiple firsts like OG. And I don't think he's going to be paid anywhere close to OG.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the guy where it's like, when he hits free agency next year, maybe that's a guy you look at.
Yeah. But it's like...
we finally get to talk about free agents
Claxton
like
first, and then, Collins second. But yeah, I don't think they're trading him this year. Unless they're, like, bad at the trade deadline, maybe they move on because they don't want to pay him or something. I don't know.
Yep. How's my ankle? It's good. It's just a little weak. I'm going to start trying to jog on it probably Wednesday. So, it's nice to be able to walk without a boot again, though. Imagine Barnes and Ayton here. I'm not a Harrison Barnes fan on this team. I just don't.
I think he meant Scotty Barnes.
Oh, Scotty Barnes. I've seen people toss out Harrison Barnes, though, so that statement stands for Harrison Barnes. Scotty Barnes, yeah. Here's the thing. I know his fit's a little weird with Scoot, but I do think Scoot can play off the ball as a cutter, and I think like having him with his athleticism, Sharp with his athleticism, if they did bring in Scotty Barnes, it'd be intriguing just to see that team run the floor and maybe play at the fastest pace in the league, and then having that maybe Draymond type of playmaking for, and how like Scoot, Sharp, maybe Ant functions off that. I'm a little bit more open to the idea of Scotty Barnes than I was a few weeks ago. But I don't know. It's like when you have the ball in Scoot's hands, having a 4 that can't shoot threes, can't space the floor, it just clogs things up a little bit. So, that's the thing. If Scotty Barnes can figure out how to shoot the 3 ball, then he's maybe an all-star. So, I understand taking that chance if he's available.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Barnes is by far the best prospect we could get in a trade. It's just he's not available.
Yeah. They wouldn't trade him for KD. Yeah, I don't see them trading him for Dame. I do really like that theory that Toronto is maybe conspiring with Portland to screw Miami and help Portland. I love those. I love those types of theories.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. I mean, whose idea do you think that would be? Do you think it would have been Ujiri's? Do you think Ujiri, if that's true, do you think Ujiri's actually told Cronin that's what's up?
I just know that Cronin has been very frustrated by Ujiri in the past with his asking prices on players. And not just Cronin. It's like, that's a league-wide thing. Yeah. Like, a lot of GMs, like, are super frustrated, like, especially at the trade deadline last year. Keeping OG when he's getting offered like 3 firsts for him and stuff. Apparently the Blazers offered Anthony a multiple first, if you believe those reports. So like, I just find it really hard to believe after all these tough negotiations and Toronto being like, oh, well, you better come with like every one of your assets like we're asking Miami to do, for players like OG, who's not even like an all-star, yet they're going to somehow call Joe and convince him to give up like less than what we've been trying to give up for some of those players, and they haven't accepted. So to get Dame, it just seems like a weird scenario. But also, like, I think Ujiri is starting to take a little bit of heat. No pun intended. For just like not really having a direction or not really making a big trade in a while. I know he traded for Pirtle last year, but like he hasn't really done much other than keep his guys and keep trying with the big forward lineups and stuff. And so maybe he could take a chance on it. And then the other thing is too, I mean, he's not in danger of getting fired or anything. So I heard that on a Miami podcast tonight that like Ujiri is one of those guys where like Joe Cronin couldn't trade for a guy like Dame and hope he plays, because if he doesn't, he's going to get fired, right? But like Ujiri is the type that could possibly still keep his job even if Dame doesn't report to Toronto. So it's like it's not like that big of a risk, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Like it seems weird that they do that. But it also seems weird that they haven't either started their rebuild or made a big trade anyway. So like I see both sides of it.
Yep. Leave a like on the stream, by the way. Easiest way to show us support. Let's get this to 200 likes. Chat, I'm glad you guys believe in yourself. 71% of you think you can get this to 200 likes. Right now, we're at 143, so it helps out the channel. I don't ask for likes too much. I like just sliding in little chat polls to remind you guys to hit that like button. But, we're trying to be bigger and better than ever going into the season. Trying to bring you more than ever, better content than ever. We are truly dedicated to your experience. And leaving the like is the easiest way to show us that you like us and want us to succeed in that goal. Aeromancer says he voted no. Our mods rebel against us regularly. Yeah. Aeromancer, Zach, all of them, they love to rebel against us. We'll take a few more questions, I think, and then wrap up the stream.
I was watching one of the 5 on the Floor shows today, and they had an interesting question. If you're Pat Riley, do you just go with the Godfather offer right now, or like how do you play it?
I mean, I think at this point, if you're haggling over a first-round pick in Jaime Jaquez when Dame comes in and gives you that good of a chance at a championship, what are you doing?
What if they don't accept?
I mean, here's the thing. If they come in with a Godfather package and that doesn't get accepted, they're screwed anyway.
Yeah,
I think they should just come in with the best offer they can reasonably come up with without Bam and without Jimmy Butler. They should do right now.
But what if Toronto's bluffing? Like this, they know the Toronto thing isn't real, and that there really isn't a close enough offer to even like 2/3 of what their offer is. Would you still do that?
Portland can still take him into the season.
Yeah.
And I truly think they need him to win a championship. I don't think they have much of a chance of winning a championship without him. They have a legitimate chance to make a finals again. I think they can make a finals, but both times they made the finals, they've really struggled. I think the West, just top-end talent, is better. Like, how are they going to beat Denver? They have to score with Denver because Denver is really hard to guard. They have to be able to keep up with them offensively because they weren't able to slow them down enough last year, and the offensive lulls have kind of been the one thing that are the Achilles heel of the Heat. So getting Dame, I just think that makes a huge difference. And here's the thing. If I was Miami, I'd be giving up a Godfather offer, but trying to work it so Hero goes to Indiana, and I also get back Buddy Hield.
Yeah, for sure.
Is what I would be trying to do.
Yeah, if they... But does Portland then say, wait a minute, we're not letting you get healed? like too. Like you're getting Dame, we're not letting you get healed.
I mean, you're getting what you're getting. You know, it's
Yeah.
like if that now you're just being spiteful, and it doesn't even matter for you guys if we get healed or not, because we're giving you basically all we can give up. In order to give up all that we're giving up, like we want back healed too. You know, that's
But
kind of for me. Like that's the middle ground, right? Like on our side, we can say that you have nobody giving you a better offer, and we can try and play and make a leverage play. On your side, you know, you can play hardball. So to meet in the middle, okay, we'll give you guys everything, and then we're also going to try and get back Buddy healed in this, and you guys still get back the best possible package you can get in this scenario from us, and we also get back Buddy. Like,
yeah, I think the problem is Indiana would say we're not giving up a first if we're giving up healed.
yeah, it'd have to be a week first.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where they have the least favorable of like the Clippers, OKC, and then 2 lottery teams. I forget the other 2 teams next year. So it's like that. OKC are, I think both OKC and the Clippers end up being playoff teams. I think the Clippers have a chance of being higher. I think that pick is probably in the 20s.
Yeah.
You know, like if they really want Hero, I think Hero's better than Healed. He's younger than Healed. He has more team control than Healed. And if they really want him, like I know he comes at a little higher price tag, but if they really want him, then I think a pick in the 20s there makes sense, you know? And it's not like they have, if it's some 4-team trade where the Blazers are getting Ayton too, where McConnell goes from Indiana to Phoenix as part of that trade, then, I mean, Indiana doesn't really have a need to keep McConnell around. They have Tyrese Halliburton. They have Andrew Nemhard. They just drafted Ben Shepherd, who is kind of like a big combo guard, played a lot of point guard at Belmont. So they have perimeter guys. Hero, you know, is kind of a combo guard. I think he's more of a 2, but in a pinch, you could play him a little bit at point guard if you had to. Bruce Brown has played some point guard in his career, right? Like, you got enough guys that can initiate, facilitate. I don't think they'll play TJ McConnell next year. So I think that's really what you're looking at if Portland really wants Ayton is, okay, well, Phoenix needs Nurkic, Caleb Martin, TJ McConnell, and then they might do that trade. Say we're getting 3 role players that make sense for us for Ayton. And then if you're Miami, if you can get Buddy Hield from Indiana for that, and then also get Portland the first for Hero from Indiana, like, and Portland's getting maybe 4 first-round picks, 3 from Miami if they renegotiate with OKC, and then a 4th pick from Indiana and Ayton. Like, how could they sit there and be like, no, you're getting Hield, so we're going to turn down Ayton and 4 first-round picks for Dame?
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's such a win for their perception, and it's supposedly what they want, right? They get a guy that, if they think they can be good next year, they get a guy that can help them. They also get a bunch of picks to hedge their bets, so.
Yeah. I think, yeah, this would be the Godfather offer, just so we're all clear. So, yeah, Caleb Martin going to Phoenix. Hero going to Indiana or insert team there. They send some sort of asset to Phoenix as well. And a first to us. So there's the first we get is whatever first comes from the Hero trade. And so we got Ayton and a first through other trades. And then Miami frees up one of their first-round picks in 2024 by basically just switching a protection in 2025 to unprotected in 2026. So then you got whatever first you got from Hero, or like the worst of the 2024 Indiana, they have a bunch of firsts next year. Or is it next year or 2025? It's next year, right?
Indiana, they're the bunch of firsts they have? What do you mean?
The one, like the bad first they have.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's 2024.
Okay. So yeah, you take, so you get a first and Ayton via parts going elsewhere. And then Miami frees up their 2024 first, so they give you that unprotected. They could then give you a pick swap in 2025, which probably won't matter, but you take it anyway. And then 2027 pick swap, 2028 unprotected first, 2029 pick swap, then 2030 unprotected first. So that's 4 firsts, like you mentioned, between 3 from Miami and 1 from the Hero trade. Ayton, then you ask for Jovic and Hawkes. If you don't get both of them, I don't think it's a big deal. So maybe it's just Jovic or whatever. Like, I don't think this should be the game changer here, because you're getting 8 and 4 first. I think that's a lot already. And then you get so you get that. They have 1 second round pick they can trade, and then they have and then you get the 3 pick swaps. So 4 first, 3 swaps, a second, and Ayton and Jovic, basically, and maybe Hawkes too. That's to me, I don't see why people say that's like trash. That's a pretty good return, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, chat, what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think?
And they're going, I mean, I don't see how they would rather not have Dame than give that up. That's not anything like too crazy they're giving up. I mean, it seems like a lot just laying it out, but it's not really that much.
Yeah. I mean, see, that's the thing. If it's a deal like that, I think everybody's kind of happy in the end. So
I don't know. I've seen a lot of people that say that no matter what, Miami's offer is trash.
Yeah, and that just feels to me like if it's something like that, then, and they're still saying that just feels to me like they don't want to trade Dame to Miami because it's Miami.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, Scotty Barnes is not available. We're not getting him.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll take questions. What then can we get for Grant? I've kind of been struggling with this, Eric. Like, given his contract, is it even possible to maybe get a first-round pick for him?
Yeah, I think. I mean, Philly's tough because I don't think they can trade a pick, but maybe word it some way, because they have a bunch of wording on picks already, like 2 years after this pick conveys they go to this. But, you know, you just got to find someone on a big contract, like a Tobias Harris. I think you could get Tobias in a first if they somehow had a first. But yeah, I think there's going to be options like that.
Yeah. How set are you on trading him at the deadline? Like, is this something where you're cool with keeping him long term, or is it something where you'd rather just kind of move off of him and find a more long term solution at that spot? That's maybe, you know, a young player that's a little cheaper that has upside. Like, how are you kind of approaching that position?
I'm not like set in stone either way. I mean, now that we signed him, I mean, chances are that we're gonna have the whole conversation 2 years from now. Oh, they had to give him away for nothing because it's a negative contract, right? Can't wait for that discussion. Yeah. Can't blame Olshey for that one. But yeah, so I would be just waiting to get a first, but yeah, that's next summer. The problem is, I think you want an expiring for him just to clear that contract off the books, because I don't think Jody is going to pay the tax anytime soon. So I think you do have to somehow eventually dump his contract. If you wait till next year, it's just a little harder to do.
Yeah. Shouts to Truly Spencer PDX, $2 donation, says, feeling lucky tonight. Let's get it. Tankathon fee. All right, we'll do a tankathon at the end of this thing. If you guys get it to 200 likes, Spencer paid the tankathon fee, so let's get this stream to 200 likes. We're 29 away. Shout out to Colonel Pancakes, $10 donation, says, if we get Ayton and Jovic and Jaime Hawkes and a combination of picks, I'd be happy. Just a decent fair trade, not asking for much. Agree, Colonel Pancakes. Thank you for the donation, man. Appreciate your support as always. It means the world to us. Shout out to Lucas DeBias with a 10 Rand donation.
Before you read his donation, I was just thinking about you today, Lucas, because like you were always bringing up the OG trades, and I was like, I wonder what Lucas thinks about all these OG rumors.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas, for donating and showing up when we were wondering about you, man. Because OG is the rumor right now. The donation says point guard Scoot and Simon, shooting guard Sharp, Thibault, Grady Dick. Small forward, OG Anunoby, Otto Porter Jr. Power forward, Grant Murray Walker. Center, Ayton Achua. Portland re-signed with OG Anunoby just like Jeremy Grant. OG greater than Barnes, and I assume that means Scotty Barnes. For this team, I don't like OG over Barnes, and I think every team right now would choose Barnes over OG just because his upside is much greater, and he's already a solid player.
I actually think for this team, OG is a better fit, but
to make us better like next year, but long term, I'd rather have Barnes. Prospect
wise, it's not close. I think you could get much more flipping Barnes than you would OG.
Also, I'm just not a fan of bringing, in my opinion, the best player on that team off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Anthony Simons would be the best player on that team next year. I don't know. I want to see Simons and Scoot start together.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, we also need to prioritize Sharp. That's why I want to start Sharp at the 3. That's the problem with getting OG, is one of those guys have to come off the bench. So, I mean, I'm super high on Anthony Simons still. I think if he's starting next to Scoot, I think you'll see his game take a jump next year, and even if you don't believe in him being the long-term answer on this team, like, his trade value will go up because of it, and it'll be better for us in the long run because we could trade him for more. So I think maximizing what he could be and just seeing what he is next to Scoot is very important. Anyway, thank you, Lucas, for the 10 Rand donation. Any other questions in chat that you see that you want to answer?
Veneer keeps asking about Aaron Gordon. He's not available. Denver's not trading him, so I don't know how we'd get him.
I mean, we could still be in play for Ayton. I don't know. It's not that we're not in play, is what I'll say. If there is a 1% chance something opens for PDX to make a home run trade to keep Dame, is it worth waiting? Go ahead.
Are you saying like Giannis or Embiid becomes available and then we're trading Scoot and Sharp and Simons or something for him? I just, at this point, I don't think they're trading Scoot no matter who becomes available. I think they're
agreed,
content on building around him. So I don't, even if someone became available, you don't even know if you're going to get him because there'd be, any one of those stars that became available would have multiple suitors. So we don't even know if we'd have the best offer.
Where does Harden end up in all of this? Do you have a prediction on that? I think he holds out a training camp and they just wait. I don't think he gets traded before Dame does.
No.
And who knows when Dame does, you know? Ayton will be the Mikal Bridges of the 2024 season. Monty Williams failed him in Phoenix. I've seen that theory. I mean, Ayton just... Is he offensively skilled enough to get 25 a game efficiently on his own? Because in order to be that level of scorer, you got to create a lot yourself, and I don't know. I know he can score a hook shot out of the post and whatnot, but that kind of has been phased a bit out of today's game. It's not like he shoots threes. I don't know. The Energy Warning says, hey, Tori, have you hooked up with a brewery/restaurant for in-person watch parties yet? Spirit of 77 near Moda comes to mind for me. Maybe a hard get, though. I absolutely want to. So if you guys have any connections to local breweries or restaurants, hit me up. We'll even give you a referral bonus if it works out. But yeah, definitely still planning on kind of doing a search. Haven't really started that yet. Well, I kind of have a list. I have a list of places. I think Spirit of 77 is on there. So fingers crossed for that, because that would be cool.
Skylar Mays is not on our roster, but he,
yeah,
for some reason, is they showed a video of like Bill Walton and Lionel Hollins and I forgot who else was there, but showing up at the Blazers practice facility, and there's Skylar Mays. The Blazers go down to watch the Ducks versus Colorado, and there's Skylar Mays with them. Like, just seems kind of weird that he's just like hanging out with them as a free agent. Obviously, I think they're gonna sign him once the Dame trade happens. I think they're just waiting for that, and they're gonna use the roster spot. Keith Smith actually said that a lot of the players that the Blazers had signed since Moses Brown aren't actually official signings yet.
Yeah, which means they're waiting for a Dame trade and seeing kind of how that shakes itself out before they commit to roster spots to those guys, because that's basically end of the roster stuff.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing, and hearing that and then seeing all the rumors lately shows just how meaningful, purposeful the Blazers are being in terms of making something happen before Media Day, in my opinion. Man, Media Day is going to be fun to cover. Shout out to Jonathan Frank, $10 donation. Says, Heat fan just saying thanks for the info/streams. Been fun and tiresome. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate you, bro.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for the donation. Yeah, it has been tiresome for all of us. Apologies to any Blazer fans you have barking at you, man, because these two fan bases are going off on each other. I don't think it has to be toxic, you know. But Blazer fans and Heat fans love to troll the other fan base and love to kind of go at each other. So that's just been the rivalry this offseason. Next offseason will probably be a different fan base. Like recently, the Raptors fan base was kind of at our necks. So it's always something. Shout out to Brandon Sleep, $5 donation. Says, paying the annoyance tax for some of my fellow Heat fans. Thank you, Brandon Sleep, for the $5 donation. That's funny, yeah, because there was a Heat fan in here trolling. He's still in here just trolling us. At least he's not posting in all caps anymore, so that's an accomplishment. So, shout out to Kitty Christmas, $2 donation. Says, Heat fan tax, thank you. And shout out to Energy Warning, $2 donation. Says, I'll be at the next watch party, boys. Cheers. Yeah. Hopefully it's at a good venue, man. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Can't wait for that kind of stuff versus this.
Versus this? Yeah. Dude, I'm so ready to just chill. Nothing has been chill for so long. And normally August and September are the months where we just kind of chill and hang out with chat and just talk some basketball, but just kind of have fun. Like, goof around a little bit. Give life advice for people who need it. You know, we have a pretty cool community here. For those of you who are new or just found us, like, I love the community that we've built. And it's kind of a tight-knit community, and a lot of times we just hang out and talk with chat when there's not basketball to talk about, and August and September are great for that. It kind of allows us to reset before we start going hard covering basketball once the regular season starts. So, unfortunately, kind of missed out on that this year a little bit. I'm looking forward to more times like that because it's some of my favorite as a streamer. And then if you want to join our Discord too, which is kind of like our community hub, there's a link in the description box below. We got like 700 people in there. Going to be plugging that this year. Maybe trying to do a couple of things through the Discord. We'll see, but you can join our Discord. A lot of cool people in there. So let me know if that link doesn't work, by the way. Should be permanent. Should work permanently. Yeah, it's near the bottom of the description. Also our second channel, which we'll be rebranding this Sunday and having an announcement regarding what's going to be on that That should be fun. I'll be dropping a content trailer update for the season on Sunday, October 1st. The problem is, Eric, I still haven't done an off-season recap. So maybe I do that in October, which is kind of weird, because the plan is every offseason to do an offseason recap with stream highlights, some narration, and just kind of go over everything that happened. But the offseason still isn't over yet. This is the longest offseason of my life. Because normally it's over well before now.
Yeah.
12 away from 200. Yeah, let's get to 200. Leave a like for the Tankathon. I will pull up the Tankathon. Thank you, Spencer, for paying the Tankathon fee.
And thank you to Heat fans for paying the Heat tax.
The Heat fan tax. I like that. All right, let's see here. Here we go.
Also, I was on with Samson Folk today on Raptors Republic. I'll put a link in chat. Talking.
Will it let you post the link?
I think it lets mods.
Okay. If it doesn't show up, then just Discord it to me and I can post it.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is the second annual Blazers and Raptors talk between Samson Folk and I. Great guy. Really fun to talk to. We just talked for an hour. It felt like 5 minutes, and yeah, I thought it was a really good conversation. So check that out if you want to.
Yep, I already listened to the majority of it. Really good listen. Samson's great. And your guys' content, because you guys kind of go deep into talking about the game of basketball, some of the intricacies of the game. So I always love podcasts like that, and kind of some intricacies of the team. So.
It was so weird to like talk about that stuff. I'm like so out of the mindset of like breaking down a player's game and like that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's weird.
I'm sure it was refreshing though, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about Dame stuff for a few minutes at the beginning, but yeah.
Got it out early, though, yeah. Do I still go by the nickname Lil Dumper? Sure.
From Thursday?
Actually, don't call me that until the Mariners season is over, because they're pulling off one of the most miserable Septembers they could possibly pull off when both the Astros and the Rangers are trying to hand them the freaking division. This season, as a Mariners fan, has been the most torturous season of any team I've been a fan of, maybe ever. It's like, wow, out of nowhere, we could win the division for the first time since 2001, and then we have been absolutely awful down the stretch and lose every one-run game. Every time we come up with something clutch, we choke it right after. Yeah, good thing the Niners are good. Anyway, 5 more likes to go. Hit that like button. Let's do this Tankathon sim, and then let's get out of here. We'll be live again on Thursday, unless there's a trade before then. Then we'll go live as soon as we possibly can. So here we go with the Tankathon. Blazers have tied for the best odds, so it doesn't matter that they're 3 or 1, unless they fall out. So let's simulate this thing. Let's scroll up. Whoever was 14th moved into the top 4. Don't know who that was. We already got some chaos. Love to see it. We should get OG Anunoby so we can get the 14th best odds in the lottery so we can move up. Well, Portland's top 4 with the other 3 teams like Washington that had the best odds. Washington and Houston. At 4 is Washington. Is the 14th place team going to move up to 1? At 3 is Houston. It's Portland and the team that was 14th, Eric. At
Nice.
2 is Dallas was the team that was 14th, and 1 is your Portland Trailblazers.
Let's go.
Yeah, yay. We get one of 5 guys. I have no idea who. It's going to be so different if we're doing Tankathon sims on post games, going from like, yay, we get Wemby, let's go, to who knows who it'll be. Like right now, Ron Holland is the favorite, but I don't know if he's going to stay the favorite. I don't know if he's head and shoulders above a couple other guys. So, yeah, guys, we get Wemby.
Alex Sarr, number 1.
Alex Sarr. He could make a run for it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm a little too high on him based off not, maybe I haven't watched him enough to be this high on him, but at this point I'm just looking for tools. I'm looking for tools and what can they do on the basketball court.
Man, it's driving me crazy, all the social media posts talking about 6'8" Ron Holland. There's no way that dude is 6'8". He looks like 6'5" at the most.
I think he's a little taller than that, but
with shoes maybe a little taller.
I mean,
not that that's bad or anything. I don't think he's 6'8" or like a forward. I think he's more like a shooting guard, like sharp kind of.
He's one of those guys that it's like he's been playing well in the preseason stuff the G League Ignite has been doing, but like I don't understand how he's able to score easily. You know what I mean? It's like some guys like Scoot, it's like, oh yeah, it's because he can just burst by everybody and rise up and dunk on you, right? And then has like a quick mid-range pull-up. Ron Holland's just weird to me because I don't understand why he's so good. He's just good.
His drives are kind of like, I don't think he like plays like Brandon Roy, but like in terms of like banking it in off weird angles and knowing where he's at in relation to the rim to where he can like go up quick without really having to look at the hoop that much. I think he's pretty skilled there. Like there was a move, so I watched those games against Perth. And yeah, he had like a Dame step back three or whatever. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he's shooting well from the free throw line in the competition he's at right now. So yeah, I think there's some shooting potential there, but I still think he's more of a shooting guard / small forward, and I don't know if that's what we need necessarily.
Yeah, for me, so like I know I was like, I've barely watched him, but I'm a little low on him. I don't get it, and then I watched him a little bit more. Like I kind of got it. He's just effective, right? It's just with projected number one picks, I feel like most of the time you can just watch them a little bit and you instantly understand why they are a projected number one pick. Like Wemby, obviously, but even like Scoot, if he was in a different draft, I feel like you watch him in the G League for, a quarter and you get it. Unless he's having a really bad quarter.
Well, if you think about it, though, like right now is basically like summer league between senior year and freshman year of college, like because like none of the college players are playing yet. So if he went to college, he'd still be like over a month away from even playing a game. So yeah, I've just seen guys come in and like projected number one picks. They come in and they're like somewhat effective, but it just doesn't pop like I don't know. Harrison Barnes was a guy that could have been a number one pick, was like really highly touted coming out of high school, and then in college just kind of dropped to 7th. I don't know. It's just intriguing this draft because there's no like clear-cut number one guy. Vineyard, please stop mentioning Thomas Bryant and Kevin Love in trades with Miami. They cannot trade those guys right now.
See, I forgot they had Thomas Bryant because, he can't be traded. Shout out to Devin Ford for being the 200th like. See, we got there. Shout out to the 71% of chat that believed in themselves. Always believe in yourself. Gonna have a video probably tomorrow. It has to get approved because there's a sponsor on it. New sponsor, just a one-off. So it'll be a mailbag. So yeah, I just have to upload it unlisted, get it approved, then I can drop it. So that'll be coming. I've been putting off the mailbag because all this stuff's come out recently, and it's like I know that the moment I go to like record it and then upload it and then wait on it to get approved, Dame's gonna finally get traded. I just know it.
Be tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it's gonna be tomorrow.
Tomorrow will be a good day for him to get traded.
What's that?
Well, I don't have anything after work, and I think if I had to, I could probably get out a little early to work. So
Yeah, just not early. No trade early in the morning, please. That's all I ask, Joe. All right? That's all I ask, man. Any final things you want to touch upon or any final comments you want to respond to?
thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate you all. I hope you all have a good rest of your night, and hope to see you guys Thursday, if not sooner.
Yeah, looking forward to it. There's a week till media day and training camp, which is insane. We're basically here, boys, and Dame is still hanging on by a thread with us. So we'll see if he finally gets shipped off to Miami or Toronto, or, I mean, what a difference of places you could go for the winter, Miami or Toronto. Or maybe that's another team. Maybe Boston comes out of nowhere and steals them. Who knows? Still not done with the Dame saga. We'll have you covered every step of the way. You can follow us on Twitter at TorJonesYT for me, at Hoopshock for Eric. Links in the description box below. Same thing with our Discord and our second channel as well, so you can subscribe to that and join our community hub. Video tomorrow. And with all that said, thank you for watching. That's a wrap. And until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.